Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. We have Kingfisher Metals presenting, and CEO Dustin Perry is here to walk us through the story. Unfortunately, the stock is not going to trade today. We're told that it's going to trade on Thursday. We apologize for moving the webinar multiple times to try and accommodate the trade date, but with the exchange being backed up and other things happening, unfortunately, we had an unforeseen delay, but that's fine. We'll make sure we play this lots on Thursday when the stock actually trades. Before we get started, as always, there will be a Q&A section at the end, so feel free to input questions in the bottom of your box there in the Q&A box, and we will get to those in the second half of the presentation. And also, as always, this will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the company's presentation on their website. With me, I also have Vanessa Bogart, who joined Adelaide Capital earlier this year, and this is her maiden webinar. So we're doing the buddy system to get her through it. But not to take away, hi, Vanessa. Not to take away from the star of the show, which is Dustin Perry, CEO of Kingfisher. Congrats on the listing, and really excited to hear what you're doing in B.Sc.
Thanks, Deborah and Vanessa. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So, yeah, we are B.C. based. We have 3 large 100% owned projects. These are district scale. And when I say district scale, I'm referring to it from a geologist standpoint, not necessarily a promoter standpoint. These are projects where we think we could make multiple discoveries. We think the geological evidence is there for the formation of a potential mining camp in the future. The deposit styles we are focused on are orogenic gold and VMS deposits. And the reason for this is because they can be really high margin deposits that can withstand bear markets. And we are optimistic on being in a big bull market here, but you never know, and we want these projects to get developed at some point. So we're focused on the things that will work. We've put together a really strong team of capital markets professionals, but also really strong B.C. focused geologists. So with our technical team combined, we have over 150 years of technical experience within the mining industry. We recently completed a $6 million financing, have a little over 6 in the bank. And then one other thing I'd like to highlight is we are a young group of progressive people, and we are focused on doing things with a minimal footprint in an environmentally responsible manner, and while really taking care of the relationships with the local stakeholders in the project areas we're working on. So the team is comprised of a lot of geologists, and then several capital markets professionals, and then quite a few people working behind the scenes to help us. So myself and my good friend and neighbor, Dave Loretto, we both live in Squamish, BC. We're both young geologists that have worked almost exclusively in BC. We've added Rick Trotman to the mix. He's the CEO of Barksdale Resources and has a strong private equity background, having worked for resource capital funds. Chris Belchins, Pino Perone, Giuseppe, and Barry McNeil all come to us. They've been working with TAG Oil for quite a long time. Lots of experience. They keep the machine running really smooth. And Gail Febo is a geologist she was without a doubt the best field partner I've ever had in my career, and she's become one of my best friends. She's one of the best structural geologists I know in BC, which is pretty key to VMS deposits and orogenic gold systems. Well, it's key to every type of mineral system, but it's incredibly important to unlocking the potential of these projects. And so far, she's done an excellent job. In addition to our management team, we've built some really strong technical advisors. Greg Leather and Jim Miller-Tate fill out the gray hair component. I'll note that Jim Miller-Tate was the mine manager at the Bralone project for about a decade. So he does have a really good understanding of the type of geology we're looking for at a Goldrange project. Greg Leather's been involved with VMS deposits, and he's been involved from exploration right up through to development. And then Zach Flood and Francis McDonald, 2 good friends of mine. I went to university with Francis. They're kind of in a similar position to us. They've just got Norland Minerals going. They're young, they're motivated, they're driven, and together, all we want to do is make a discovery. And then last but not least, my trusty field assistant, Chilko, who's been there through every hardship in the field and is sitting right behind me right now. So I'm going to introduce both of our projects in the context of what these deposit models are, and where you can find them. So things you can look at as comparisons in North America. So VMS deposits occur throughout the world, but in Western North America, there's multiple different age events that have these deposits. Some of the really well-known ones, well, Britannia was one of the largest mines in the British Empire at one point, and I drive by it on my way to Vancouver every time. Anybody driving to Whistler would drive by it as well. But some of the really well-known ones would be the S.K. Creek mine, which is seeing a lot of revitalization. The age group of rocks we are looking for these VMS deposits correlate with a few different ones that the best known would be the Arctic Ambler district that Trilogy Metals and South 32 are developing at a pretty quick pace. South 32 has invested over 150 million US into that project. So one big key with these deposit styles is they occur in clusters. If you find one, there's often more lurking around. And I think a good example for that would be what's happening in the SK district right now. SK Mining has really just been started to poke around, and they've made some really nice discoveries very close to SK Creek. And if you look at this map here, you can see all these orange dots represent VMS occurrences, and you can see they really do cluster. So the well-known districts, the Arctic Ambler district, Bonneville, which White Rock Minerals holds, and the Finlayson Lake district, which is being developed by a private British company, and then Ecstall down to the south. The one big difference between Ecstall and all these other projects is it just hasn't seen a lot of drilling. There was a fair bit of work early in the 1900s there. Falconbridge and Noranda completed a JV in the 1980s when copper was not on its way down. But very limited drilling was done. A lot of the early groundwork that really proved this to geologists, such as the B.C. Geological Survey, which did a lot of focused studies on that, that's been done, and we've put together all this information, and we're pretty excited about this opportunity. But one other big key component about the Ecstall property is that it's located at Tidewater. It's got a hydroelectric facility 10 kilometers from the north end of it. The south end of it sits on the shipping lane that LNG tankers will take to Asia from the Kitimat LNG project, which is the largest infrastructure project going in Canada right now, $40 billion. So we're in an area with lots of access to a workforce. There's cheap hydroelectric power nearby and a long working season. So there's a lot of strategic advantages when you compare this with, say, the Arctic Ambler project, which requires a several 100-mile road. So further to that, the Arctic Ambler project and the Ecstall project show a lot of similarities. These two maps are at scale, Ecstall above and Arctic below. You can see they have a similar type of geological setting. And then you can also see these little dots are the VMS occurrences and the big dots are VMS deposits, whether they have a 43101 resource or they have a non-compliant historic resource. This really indicates what I was talking about, how these deposits occur in clusters, but there's just way less work that's been done at Ecstall. Another little tidbit here down in the bottom right corner, you can see some really well-known mining camps. These are all at scale, and you can see that where there's one, there's often many. And one really nice thing about these projects is because of that long mine life, they've been able to create a lot of companies. A lot of companies really were built around these deposit styles. Noranda and Hudbay had a lot of success with them. So this is what's got us really excited about this project. On the left, you can see the geology, which we've done a lot of work compiling all this information. The yellow units there are the favorable felsic horizons, which host the majority of mineralization. And on the right, there's a BTEM survey that we flew in 2019. This was the first modern airborne magnetic survey done on the project, and it highlighted numerous targets. There's over 40 that came out of the analysis of this. When we did this in 2019, we only had time to evaluate one of them because the survey finished near the end of the field season, and we went to the Shiner Zone. It's called the Shiner Zone because my wood-handled rock hammer broke and the metal head came back, hit me in the face, and gave me a big shiner. But we were really encouraged by our first couple days on that zone. Initial results were up to 3.27% copper, 2.1 grams per ton gold, over 7% zinc, and over 50 grams silver. So pretty interesting to find a new zone of mineralization, of really a true VMS system with very limited work and after following up on the first conductor. So there's a lot of work to be done here going through these and evaluating them. but we think this is a bona fide VMS district. So further that, there's a lot more evidence. Stream sediment samples for copper on the left are plotted there, and you can see a strong correlation between zones of mineralization. One thing to note, though, is within this belt, the VMS deposit, the stratigraphy is pretty vertical. So it actually is pretty easy to hide one of these systems. That's why stream sediment sampling might not pick up every one of them, but the VTEM conductivity should pick up a lot of them. You can also see the rock samples for copper on the right. Given the length of this presentation, I've elected just to highlight the copper potential here. But there is pretty good grades in other elements too, such as gold up to almost 10 grams per ton, and some really good grades up to 8% copper. Horsefly had seen a little bit of drilling, only just shy of 1,100 meters, but narrow, massive sulfide intervals of really high grade were intersected up to over 5.5% copper. This, at the Horsefly zone, it sits on a 4-kilometer long VTEM conductor, and they've just nicked the surface of it. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is the potential of this project. It is going to take a fair bit of work, and we're going to work through it methodically and cost effectively, but we think there's a big potential lurking here. So I've already discussed what we've done on this project. Going forward, the first key items we need to do are a gravity survey with VTEM conductors. You can get false positives, but if you follow it up and get a coincident gravity anomaly, it's about as good of a drill target as you can get for a VMS system. You can see some examples of the styles of mineralization here. This would be at the 13 Creek zone, and above you can see the Shiner zone, which is, believe it or not, we were the first people to take a sample on that. It was covered in permanent snow prior to that. So the next type of deposit we're focused on are orogenic gold systems. Orogenic gold, they occur around the world. Predominantly in Ontario and Quebec are very famous for these systems, but Western North America is also pretty famous. The Western North American systems occurred much younger. They occurred within the Cretaceous time period, but there's some like really good examples of them, but there hasn't been a lot of exploration for them in BC. Really well-known ones would include the Donlin Gold Project, which is almost 34 million ounces gold, Pogo in the Goodpaster District, the Dawson Gold Belt with white gold and coffee. And then within BC, the Barkerville or Caribou Goldfields has been revitalized through Osisko Developments taking over of Barkerville Gold. That's coming or starting to look like a really good camp with potential for a lot more than the 5.9 million ounces they have. But where we are is within what we're calling the Yalakom Gold Belt. It's anchored by the Yalakom Fault, which is a major structure, just like a lot of other structures around the world that host a lot of gold mineralization. And the Bralone deposit, which is really, as Talisker Resources, who owns it, says the crown jewel of BC. It really is. It produced 4.2 million ounces at 17.7 grams per ton. There's not a lot of these systems kicking around anymore, but we think we're onto something like that at our Goldrange project. And Thibert, our second orogenic gold project, has a lot of indications too that there's potential for a large deposit. So I'm going to touch on Goldrange and then a little bit on Thibert. So Goldrange is located in southwest BC. It's about a 2.5-hour drive west of Williams Lake, and then a 30-minute drive on a very good graded logging road. There's houses right at the north end of the project area, so you can drive a Honda Civic if you wanted to there. One big benefit about this project, in my opinion, it is helicopter access, but it's in a sweet spot. It takes 6 minutes to get from a helicopter base to our main area of interest on the project, a couple minutes to the north end of the project. Because of that, though, it's limited a lot of the early exploration that would have happened back in the prospector era. Despite that, there was some hand mining activities on the project that turned up some pretty incredible grades. And from a regional perspective, this is one of the biggest anomalies I've ever seen in BC for gold. It's highly anomalous in stream sediment samples, also in rock samples, and also in soil samples. And the distribution across the large 211 square kilometer project is pretty impressive. What I'm illustrating here is a side-by-side at scale comparison of the Bralone area, which is really the gold or the Bridge River district. Bralone hosts or the Bridge River District hosts the Bralone deposit, but it's also host to the Reliance project that Endurance Gold has been having a fair bit of success on. They actually put out some news this morning, I noticed. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is that these are very similar districts. They occurred during the same time of compression within this part of BC, which is predated by intrusives, which are 65 million years old at Bralone and 68 million years at Goldrange. So there's good evidence for these being at the same time. Lithologies, the rock types are pretty similar. The structural patterns are pretty similar. And then even the zonation of the style of orogenic gold is similar. At both areas, you're getting deeper mesozonal veins to the west. A good example of a mesozonal system would be Bralone or the Dixie project that Great Bear has. And then to the east, you're getting higher level epizonal systems. So maybe there was less erosion present. And good examples of these epizonal systems would be the Reliance project, but also on an international scale, Fosterville in the Victoria Goldfields, Newfound Gold in Newfoundland, and then Donlin Gold and maybe Coffee in north of us. So we've got this similar zonation, but just way less exploration. And what we set out to do this past year was look at one area in particular, the cloud drifter trend, as well as evaluating a few of these other targets. But this cloud drifter trend, which I'm going to go into more detail, is really what got us excited. So before I get into that, I need to show you the regional story of what it really looks like here. This is a big project. There's gold all around it. There's been a reasonable amount of exploration work on the project, but it hasn't gotten that deep into the details. And still, there's a lot of unworked areas on this project. There's stream sediment samples on the left. I believe there's a round of 100 stream sediment samples taken on this project, and 4 of them are over 0.3 grams per ton gold, which is pretty astounding. You don't see that too often in your career. There's up to 1.7 grams per ton gold in a stream sediment, which is draining part of the cloud drifter trend. So in streams, it looks really good, but also in rocks, it looks really good on the right. The best grade from historic sampling we found on the property is 0.4 meters at 360 grams per ton, but there's many samples in the 20 gram range across the project area, and just a lot of gaps to fill in between them. So the cloud drifter trend is what really got us excited. This is why we picked this project up. The cloud drifter trend was a gold anomaly in soils that was identified by Ross Beatty's first company, Equinox Resources, from 1987 to 1988. When they completed this program and identified this, I've gone back through an annual report, which is available online, and they had proposed diamond drilling and trenching, and then gold just took a plunge and kept on going down for the better part of a decade. So their loss was to our benefit. This area was held by a variety of different prospectors. Knorrland saw the opportunity and picked up part of it, and we managed to strike a very good deal with them and pick up the surrounding different properties and staking. I think there was about 5 different acquisitions. We were able to put this together. But to touch on this soil anomaly, this is a big soil anomaly. I've never seen a soil anomaly like this in my career that doesn't have a drill hole into it. There's 20 samples over 1 gram per ton within this 3 kilometer long anomaly. And what we set out to do this year was to confirm this anomaly, to infill it and provide much higher resolution data, but also explain it. The historic anomaly was little more than a soil anomaly with a few high-grade rocks around, and the historic adits mapped located on the map. We did not see any evidence, or not evidence, we did not see any description that really fit this anomaly, and we identified that as an opportunity. We were looking at it through the orogenic lens because that's the environment it's in. It's not really an environment for any other type of system. Maybe there's some intrusive component to it, but it's a structural regime. So we went out with Gail Febo this year, and she did one hell of a job mapping all the structure in, identifying the intrusives. This was done through field mapping, but also we did a high resolution airborne mag survey over this, and we did a LiDAR survey over this as well. So we've got a pretty good handle on this system now. We've got a lot of news coming out. I think within the field of view here, over 300 rock samples were taken and 1,000 soil samples were taken. We do see a strong intrusive component here. You can see within this anomaly, these shaded white areas. are the mapped intrusives we've located. And you can see these blips, which are well over a gram, or in soils, are really showing up near the contacts of these intrusives. This got us really excited seeing this intrusive component because it really points to the potential for a larger system. But the grade is also here. Samples at the Langara zone up to almost 27 grams per ton. There was a historic adit from the 1930s driven up here, two over at the Langara zone as well. But at the standard zone, there was a historic adit with a 3.4 meter trench sample of 12.3 grams per ton. So pretty good numbers to start with. And we like this target a lot, and we're going to advance it as rapidly as possible. So I've touched on what we did. One other tool that we used this past summer was a backpack drill. You can use a backpack drill without a permit. It's a man-portable rig. Our deepest hole was 9.6 meters. I think we did about 60 meters total across the project area. We also did a lot of hand trenching. You can see trenches on the image on the left that we completed. And then on the bottom left, you can see an image of what this intrusive looks like. That's stockwork arsenopyrite with a little bit of chalcopyrite throughout it. Pretty impressive rock, evidence for a huge amount of fluid flow through it. And yeah, we're incredibly excited about this. So going forward on this, the next step is to do an IP survey over this. There's a lot of sulfide in the system, so it's going to respond well to IP, and that will enable us to really focus those drill holes, which we're hoping to accomplish this summer. Additionally, our plan is to systematically explore this property, get the same level of background information that we have at Ecstall across the Goldrange project. And Thibert, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we haven't actually been there yet. I've worked directly across the highway from it. Thibert's located north of Dease Lake on the Stewart-Cassiar Highway. It covers a past producing and currently producing placer district that's been active since the 1870s. The project sits on a major terrain bounding fault that actually goes all the way to the Dawson Gold Belt. And there's some pretty interesting little tidbits here. Going through all the annual mine reports from the B.C. government, there's reports of a prospector in the 1920s recovering 60 ounces from a 100-pound boulder. In the mines report, it was listed as having spectacular mineralization of really coarse gold. This is from the report. We haven't been able to verify this, but it fits the bill given that it's in a placer camp. Additionally, some really high grade values were taken from pits below where they were placer mining, such as 12.2 meters or 9 grams per ton. And then other work done by Noranda in the area in the 1980s identified alteration signatures that you would expect with orogenic systems. From a regional standpoint, it's got the right geochemical signature, and it's got roads all through it from the placer mining that's sitting right on the highway. So it's well located, and the next slide will say we're intending to find the source of this placer camp. Around 200,000 ounces of production with no lode occurrence puts it in a pretty good location for making a discovery. So that's everything I'm going to touch on here, I think, or I guess I haven't covered our capital summary yet. I'm sorry. So yeah, we've got 68.5 million shares outstanding coming out the gates. With a market cap of 17.1 million. There's 35.8 million warrants outstanding, but about 11 million of those are at 12.5 cents with a 30-cent accelerator. So we would expect those probably to get exercised going into the field season. A lot of shares are under escrow. There's going to be 7.8 million shares free trading on the date of listing, with 1.2 of those belonging to insiders who are not going to be selling. We've managed to put together a really strong group of institutional shareholders. So Crescat Capital out of the United States, Commodity Capital out of Europe, another family office out of Europe. EMX Royalty took an equity position without a royalty, which is pretty rare for them. Kenorland Minerals owns a royalty position via the projects we purchased off them. We have broker backing from PI, Canaccord, and Haywood. Our lead broker is Brian Henry. So I'm pretty satisfied and proud of what we've done here, because we are really a technical team, but we've been able to put together some strong capital markets people. The shell we've done the RTO with brought us Alex Langer and Hugh Rogers, who've got a lot of experience dealing with different funds. And they've been able to get us in front of a lot of people and allow us to really share our story and our excitement with these investors who see our vision. So with that in mind, the big value proposition here, if I were to tell you at a bar, I would say it's that we're going to do whatever it takes to make a discovery. But outside of that, we have the 100% ownership of 3 really large district scale projects that are all incredibly prospective. We've got excellent exposure to high grade gold and copper. These districts have really a ton of potential, but they're underexplored, which is the sweet spot for making a discovery. We're operating in B.C., which is mining friendly. It's what we know. We've grown up here. We were born here. This is where we worked. There's potential for discoveries on all 3 projects. We have the funding to do what we need to do to advance these projects. We've got the team, we've got the motivation, and we're really going to get things going here really quickly and hit the ground running this summer.
So thanks, Dustin. For the audience participants, if you want to ask any questions, feel free. Now's your time. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, I think Vanessa has one to kick it off.
One that's near and dear to my heart is always CSR. Dustin, you touched on your intentions to do the best job possible, so please elaborate.
Yeah, so we've been really active with First Nations engagement. Dave Loretto is actually going up to one of the communities next week. We've been proactive with sharing as much, like full transparency. We've even created apps in the field for collecting wildlife observations and cultural occurrences. And we're sharing absolutely everything we can that isn't confidential with all the First Nation groups, trying to enter into exploration agreements as quickly as possible with them. And then on the ground, like Dave and I are both big time outdoorsmen. In our free time, we hunt, we fish, we backcountry ski, this kind of stuff. So we focused on high grade deposit styles for a reason, because if developed, they'll likely be underground mines. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do mining with less impact, but also creating positive effects for local economies.
Right, that sounds excellent. And in terms of administration in BC, how easy is it to get permitted?
It depends on where you're working. It's a lot easier to get permitted when you are being proactive and working with the communities. We're expecting to have our Ecstall permit any day now, and we're nearing the end of consultation on our Goldrange permit. And then we are just beginning to do outreach on Thibert, which we haven't actually been to yet.
Okay. So drilling plans?
I'm not going to commit on anything until we have a drill permit, but the goal is to drill the cloud drifter trend at Goldrange, and then as soon as possible. And I would think that would be this summer. We're planning for it.
Understood. And then, of course, we'll get to, once you're on the road with the drilling, we'll talk about results. So that's early still. How did you see yourselves as a differentiator? There's some really strong players in BC. So,
well, one thing we're doing is we're not really following the trend. We're looking at a lot of deposit styles that not a lot of people are looking at, but the big key is we're not looking where everyone else is looking. We didn't just say, oh, we want to start a company, let's go find an overpriced property in a hot real estate area. We're looking at things based on geology and prospectivity and the odds of actually making a discovery, which will really return a lot of shareholder value to everybody. So what differentiates us is we are very science driven. I know there's other groups out there doing the same, but we're not going for buzzwords. We're going to make a discovery, and we're out there doing it too. I was out there for about 45 days last summer. I was in the field. It was pretty crazy being out there in the field, getting back to the heli base, taking calls, and we were doing a financing during that. So it's that, and the fact that we will do whatever it takes to make a discovery here. We're incredibly driven, and we're set to. We're here to make an impact.
That sounds great.
I have a question. It's actually a follow-on question, if you don't mind, Vanessa, if I can jump back in. I think I lost my Wi-Fi for a minute, so sorry for leaving you. So, Dustin, you mentioned being data-driven and science-driven. This is a theme that we see a number of groups that are younger and more science-backed or looking at exploration in a different way. Maybe you can walk us through kind of what's going on, how you see geology and the art of exploration changing over the most recent years.
Okay, well, yeah, there's many different new technologies that haven't necessarily been used in the past, but I would say the one thing that a lot of the younger cohort is using now is, so we spent a lot of time in a bear market where there wasn't a lot of money available, and we had to learn how to deploy capital really efficiently and do things on a really small budget. A good example of that would be at Goldrange last summer. Our team took a ridiculous amount of data and high quality data, and they were only out there for 6 weeks. It was a really tight budget. I think we spent about $500,000 to $600,000, and we completed property-wide LiDAR. We completed a mag survey, and then 1,100 soil samples, 500 rock samples, this backpack drilling. We did everything sleeping on the ground. That's what a lot of the young people know. They know how to do things, not rush into drilling, collect all the right appropriate data that you can do at a low cost, and have, drill with conviction. Don't just drill because the market wants you to drill, because that often doesn't work out. And that's if I was an investor, I wouldn't be putting my money on companies that are just throwing around darts. It's about well thought out, taking all the steps to reduce risk on a drill target, and then drilling your best target.
So do more baseline, more prelim, and be more highly vindicated on the targets you pick.
Yeah, exactly. And also on a lot of projects, there's a wealth of historic information, and you see a lot of companies, they might have a map out and it is missing half the information that was taken there. And it makes me wonder, do they even have that in their database? But the first thing in 2018, actually, prior to going public, or prior to even starting Kingfisher, when I put together the Ecstall project, I spent the better part of a year actually digitizing historic information. Then we contacted the B.C. Geological Survey, and a retired geologist had several banker boxes full of unpublished data from dating back to early 1900s. Having all this kind of information is a huge benefit. I know Kenorland does the same thing. Zach or Francis and I have always talked about this. We actually both have a Canadian working for us who lives in the Philippines, and charges out his entire family there. And we get everything digitized incredibly quickly, which is great, not just for our own project, but evaluating other projects and having comparisons so we can really see how our projects and our targets stack up against other ones.
We have a question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Vanessa.
Okay, I found the question and answer box. Any of your projects in the areas of BC that get refunds of exploration spending from the BC government?
Yes. So everywhere in BC, you get a refund if you're not spending flow-through money, if you're spending hard dollars. But then the Goldrange project gets an extra 10% because it's in the Mountain Pine Beetle area.
Great, thank you. So what does success look like for you then, Dustin, and the team?
What does success look like?
Yeah, say fast forward a year. What are you hoping to share with us in a year's time?
Well, I would like to identify at least another VMS center or system at Ecstall. And at Goldrange, we'd like to identify other zones as well, but also intersect a significant mineral system there. So a good example would be, say, 10 grams per ton over 10 meters, and hopefully in multiple holes over a bit of strike length. That would be a good start. But ultimate success is a lot higher goals than that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Can you elaborate on your agreement with Kenorland? I assume since two advisors are from the Kenorland team, they may be a long-term partner.
Yeah, so Zach and Francis were involved from the get-go. And we picked up the Goldrange project off them right after PDAC, actually. This was a good example of PDAC working wonders, at 2 a.m. at the Moose, I forget the name, You know,
The Loose Moose.
Loose Moose, yeah, like 2 a.m. at the Loose Moose. We were looking at somebody's phone, one of the Kenora Line guys' phone, and saw this map of Goldrange, and immediately was like, okay, we need it. And we did a deal very quickly after that, which was good timing because it was before gold's like meteoric rise last spring. And so we did that transaction. That was $50,000 in stock at the time, which was 500,000 shares. They've got a 2% royalty on it, 2% NSR on it. And then we picked up the Thibert property from them as well. I think it was in June or so of last year. And that transaction was, it was $100,000 in stock at the time, which was 1 million shares. And then we owe them another $100,000 in stock at the first anniversary of listing. So that's a business relationship, but they've been involved from the get-go. We bounce out a lot of ideas off each other. Francis has a lot of experience in orogenic gold and VMS systems. He's also advising Sun Peak in Ethiopia. So he's got a lot of experience with VMS systems. He's a good asset in that regard. And they also just think on the same wavelength as us. They've, you know, when we're out hanging out with each other, we're talking about rocks, talking about how to make a discovery. It's a pretty one-track mind with us.
I think that's the best thing I've heard come out of the Loose Moose. So, I think we've got another question as well. So who owns the Ecstall deposit?
A man that lived, a mining guy in Denver, actually. He owns the Crown grants there for the Ecstall deposit. We have approached him. I think he's holding out for us to do some more work on the project and increase the value. But we've made an effort to get it. Ultimately, though, it's not economic on its own, and we're chasing larger VMS systems there. That system was outcropping. There's every single known occurrence there is outcropping, and we're trying to target the things that are not outcropping because the size potential is there. That Ecstall deposit was actually believed to be twice its size by the BC government or BC Geological Survey, but it's sitting in a creek, so it's been eroded. An interesting story, actually. It was discovered by an indigenous fisherman, I believe, in the late 1800s, because the gravel bar draining the creek is just complete pyrite, which would be pretty spectacular.
You've given us a lot of great content so far to work with on your social media, so we'll look forward to much more, Dustin. Getting another question here. Do you think GT Gold is the first of many acquisitions in BC? Seems like there are a lot of great assets in the area.
Yeah, I think there will be a lot more. It's good to see Newmont active because they're also active at Galore Creek. I know our VPX scale worked with them and with them a lot at Galore Creek during because Tech and Newmont were working together. And by the sounds of it, they are actively reviewing projects. I'm sure we'll be having site visits here fairly soon once this pandemic is over. But yeah, I think there will be a lot more interest. BC is a good spot. It's a stable location, and the mineral potential here is second to none. There just hasn't been the same level of exploration due to a number of reasons: glaciers, topography, and just people haven't been exploring here for the same length of time as many other areas.
Right. And turning our gaze back to Ecstall, do you have a favorite prospect?
Well, the Shiner Zone, or maybe the next one that gives me a black eye.
An omen indeed.
No, I like the Shiner Zone because nobody's drilled it. We'll see what happens when we do gravity over it. But Horsefly also looks really good because there's evidence of grade there. And VMS systems, they pinch and swell. You can hit just the tip of it, and then you start chasing it down dip or along strike, and then it swells to tens of meters of width. So grade is the key, and the grade is there. So Horsefly is good too, but obviously Shiner is close to my heart or my eye.
Oh, well, we'll ask Chilko which one his favorite is.
Yeah.
I have a question, actually, Dustin. I don't think I've asked you this. Why the name Kingfisher? Seems like everything that you've named has a story behind it. So what's the story there?
Well, okay. So the first name for this company was actually Full Curl Resources. The reason for that is Dave and I are both big hunters. We like sheep hunting in northern BC. Neither of us have got one yet, but it's kind of like an exploration. It's the lofty goals, but it's really challenging. And Full Curl is just the perfect, beautiful ram you see in the mountains. And that was our first name. And all our directors came back to us saying, we can't. You guys got to change your name because we're having to explain this to everybody. People think it's like an Arnold Schwarzenegger reference, so doing a full curl. So we had to change, and I think we spent about 2 days throwing around a few names, and Kingfisher stuck. I see a lot of them where I live, though. I do a lot of rafting on the river in Squamish, and see a lot of them. So maybe that was an omen.
Interesting. Well, I don't see any more questions. Vanessa, do you have any more questions?
Not so much. I know I'll have a lot once you start your next field program, Dustin. And actually, yes, the helicopter. So you've got some topography going on, as we can see there.
Yeah, I'm right above the cloud drifter zone here. The main soil anomaly, well, it stretches from basically where I am to this forested area is actually the main area of the anomaly that we're pretty excited about. But then it stretches up and over this mountain in the back here too.
So it's a short helicopter ride.
It's so there's a helicopter base right near it, which is really unusual for exploration in more remote parts of BC. Generally, you got to go to a major center. But there's a family there that was actually hand mining. So there are 3 generations. They own a ranch in the valley, and they were hand mining there in the 1930s using like a train of draft horses with ropes going way up a mountain to pull ore buckets. Pretty crazy stuff. They still have some of the old ore carts at their ranch there, but they were there for a number of reasons. There's forest fires in the area on the plateau there, and they attend to that. Mm-hmm. They did do a fair bit of exploration back in the day. There was some exploration throughout the Goldrange project. Homestake did a bit of work there in the 1980s, as well as Equinox. But yeah, it's really close. It's it was 6-minute flight or so, and the weather was great there. Though, as you can see here, this photo was taken in October, and we had up to 22 degrees in the Alpine in October. We had 0 standby days last summer when I was reading reports of drill programs getting canceled in the Golden Triangle because they just could never get the drill off the ground and were blowing the budget on standby time. So it is a favorable aspect of this project, the weather, and it extends the working season. We're going to get out there in early May, and the helicopter time isn't that bad. And we've got excellent pilots too. I don't think any time in my career I've had 2 pilots with around 20,000 hours on the same team. And these guys mean business. That's one thing that a lot of people don't understand, how much with helicopter work, how much weather and pilot quality factors into whether you can actually do a budget on schedule. I've had programs where you get sent a young pilot and you just balloon the budget. But we've got an ex-heli logging a guy. So, if you can dangle around big old growth cedars, I think you can move a drill.
That's fantastic. It's great to hear that.
Interesting. Well, sorry. I was just going to say, I actually have a lot of familiarity with helicopters. My brother was a heli-skiing guide for 20 years. So similar logistics of having to operate in tough BC conditions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to actually going to site one day.
Oh yeah, it's amazing there. It's good walking around. It is steep in parts, but there's also a lot of easy hiking, and the heli base where you can stage from has beautiful fishing. They've stocked the lake right beside them for you can take an ATV to it and fly fish. Nice horses running around. It's beautiful weather. It's one of my favorite places in BC.
How long does it take you from your door to your office door in the field?
So it would take me I think I've done it in about 8 hours. You do have to go a little bit roundabout. If we had an investor tour, I live about 5-minute drive from the Squamish airport. We could meet there and take a small lightweight plane and fly there in about an hour. So it's not that far. It is a bit of a roundabout because you got to go through Williams Lake and then west. You can't take a straight line there, but you get there in a day, no problem.
All right, I've got one question to wrap it all up, Dustin. It's a long one. You ready?
Yeah.
So first, if you could just go back over like what Kingfisher is, where you want to take the company, and give us some of the near-term catalysts that you're most excited about.
Okay. So,
on Thursday.
Pardon me?
Other than the trading date on Thursday.
Yeah. So Kingfisher is a group focused on making a discovery. That is the focus here. We've got an advisor on our board who has been, or a couple that have been involved with a lot of mining, but our focus here is really on making a discovery and having one of these projects bought out by a major, which is why we focused on these large projects where you can prove up a district. So the near-term catalyst will be drilling as soon as we can. We'll announce that in the coming weeks, I would hope. But when we drill the Cloud Drifter trend, I got to say it's without a doubt the highest conviction. It will be the highest conviction drill program I've ever been a part of by a long shot in my career. The evidence is there, and there's a really big gold system lurking there. But then Ecstall, we will probably, I'm not sure when we'll get drilling there yet. We got to do the gravity first. But the near-term catalyst will be, we're going to probably spend around $3.5 million this summer, doing a lot of exploration on all three projects. And I think we're going to make a discovery.
I hope so. Exciting times.
We look forward to the site visits and the news flow.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, thanks for presenting today, Dustin. I think it's a really interesting story. You've got a great management team, highly experienced, highly disciplined, as you discussed today. And you've got some really highly prospective copper gold targets in B.C., which is a safe jurisdiction, but also there's a lot of activity there. It's an exciting time, I think, for the province. So looking forward to the results. Have I missed anything, Vanessa? Dustin?
Yeah, Deborah, you're the pro. You covered it all.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for participating. And yeah, look forward to the trading date under the ticker KFR on Thursday.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.